Hey guys, welcome back. I was just thinking about this a lot, and this is something I felt like I really needed to film while it was on my mind. I promise the next Unpopular Geek Reviews will be coming out really soon. It's going to be on Iron Man 3, so stay tuned for that. Basically, my defense of Iron Man 3. And based on that note, you know, I pretty heavily defended The Last Jedi in a review. Now, before you just mash dislike or whatever, you should hear me out. And this is not a defending The Last Jedi video. This has nothing to do with The Last Jedi, except for the fans. This has to do, and no, this isn't a "you don't have a right to hate The Last Jedi, your opinion sucks" video. I'm totally fine with your opinion. This is going to be a video about those fans, those super toxic people out there, those fans who, post these awful things and target other people and are just jerks, and it makes me sick to my stomach. It's going to be about the bad side of the Star Wars fandom, I would say, and why this is a problem. So, I'm just going to start off by saying I've seen all the main series live-action Star Wars movies, so episodes 1 through 3, episodes 4 through 6, and episodes 7 and 8, and Solo and Rogue One. I have a ranking of those movies on my channel somewhere if you want to look it up. But that's not really important right now. I have not watched the Clone Wars or done expanded universe and stuff. I was born in 2002. People complaining about ruining the canon and stuff. You have valid complaints, I'm sure. I can totally understand if you grew up with the novels and stuff, why you would be frustrated or whatever, but, and again, I'm not angry. I understand ruining the timeline. I understand it all too well, how angry you'd be. I would be so mad if the Marvel canon I'm following, if the, Infinity War MCU canon were into the timeline. I would be so mad right now. But I will say that, that those things were never, I mean, maybe they were canon, but they were never official canon the same way, or they were technically canon, but it was never the main series movies. And I will say that the new movies make it a lot easier for newer fans like myself and younger fans to get into Star Wars. Now, this is not a defense of the new canon or anything. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just explaining where I'm coming from before I get going with this. But I'm going to be talking about a few of my problems I have with the fandom in general, and oh boy, these are a lot of people. So my first big problem is people who say you are a fake fan, or whatever. If you enjoy Star Wars in any way, shape, or form, and you're not an asshole about it, you are a real fan of Star Wars. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter if you dislike a certain movie or if you liked a certain movie. I'm allowed to like The Last Jedi. I'm a real fan of Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back is my favorite movie of all time. Don't tell me I'm not a real fan of Star Wars. The same thing, if you say Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie, you are not a fake fan. I believe 100% you are a real fan of Star Wars. The people who are fake fans are the people who claim to be real fans and just go online and be asses about it because that is apparently makes them feel better. So telling someone they're a fake fan of Star Wars or really anything because they have a different opinion is just so mean, and I don't like it. The next big problem I have is, and this is a huge, huge problem I have with the fandom, is the, sort of, hatred towards the people who, make the movies, like directors and actors, and the just straight up bullying, name calling, mean comments, harassment, things. And yes, I know they're famous people, they may never see the comments. I know, they can't read every comment, of course. And yes, they're famous people, but famous people can get offended too. Just because someone is famous doesn't mean they're not a human, and you shouldn't treat them like another human being. And keep in mind, before I go into this, I know that these people I'm talking about, these territorial fake fan asshole people, are a very small vocal minority of the fandom. I know there's plenty of chill Star Wars fans like myself. I know there's plenty of fans who have problems with one or more of the movies, but don't be a jerk about it. I know plenty of people like that. So, what I'm going to say is that I stopped caring about canon a long time ago. Just a quick argument I'm throwing out there, which is completely unrelated, but, if you say this, that Disney movies have no cohesion and canon, just look at the prequels. Anyway, going back, and I don't dislike the prequels either. You have them in my ranking. I have a ranking of the movies on my channel. Not trying to plug or anything. Going back to the people I hate. So, this obviously used to happen. This started with the prequels. This used to happen. Obviously, people would hate on George Lucas, which, obviously, that's understandable. I mean, he's George Lucas. There's so many, like, followers, like, so many people. So, like, obviously, if you are in that position, you are setting yourself up for backlash. But it's still not fair. It's still not very nice or fair. And, going back to, and I'm not saying I appreciate everything he's ever done, not even from an artistic standpoint. But what I'm saying is it's not fair to just be mean. And the same thing happened with the prequel era. You got people being mad at Hayden Christensen and mad at, Jake Lloyd, the little kid Anakin, and, like, a lot of the actors. And just because they're not good actors, first of all, the kid Anakin, he was a child. He just did what they told him to do on set. And Hayden Christensen may not be a good actor, but that's not a reason to say he's a bad person or send him hate. I mean, he was working with green screen in a pretty bad script, so I would give him the benefit of the doubt. And also, I think it was a bad direction choice, which comes back to the George Lucas hatred. I'm gonna say right now, my dad told me what he thought about the prequels. He said that The Phantom Menace was him trying to make a movie that he would have enjoyed as a kid, and the other two films, he was going with a James Dean thing of Anakin, which I completely don't think works at all. I don't like James Dean. I don't like that kind of thing. Sorry, Taylor Swift. And this kind of thing I'm not a fan of, but I will say that he is allowed to make those movies because, technically, if you have complete creative control, George Lucas owned the franchise at the time, so he did have complete creative control over it. So, technically, he was allowed to make them, and I know there's people saying, well, he's allowed to make them, I'm allowed to an opinion. Yes, of course you're allowed to have an opinion. You don't have to like the movies. And, by the way, everything I'm saying applies to the newer trilogies and applies to Rian Johnson and all that, so just keep that in mind. And I'll get to that in a minute. But, anyway, people saying this sort of thing, it doesn't, just because someone made something you dislike, you have every right to dislike it. To never want to see it again. To hate it, even, if you really remove it. But you don't have a right to treat people like garbage. And this happens, I mean, especially if a person is a kid. Like, this reminds me of, like, Rebecca Black when she released Friday. Like, I've seen comments on that video which are like, go kill yourself or whatever. She was 13. Go watch her Draw My Life. She was making it for an experience and to see if her grandma and a few people said it. And it's just not fair to me. It's just not fair. It doesn't seem fair. And of course, we've got the newer instances of Rian Johnson and Kelly Marie Tran, the girl who plays Rose Tico, in the movie. And I don't know much about Rian Johnson, but I don't really have any, like, I'm not going, even if I loathed a movie with a passion, which I don't, I like quite a bit about the movie. There's a few things I didn't like about it, which I touched on in my review and also in my ranking. But, and yes, there were plenty of problems with the movie, but that's also not the point. And as there were for prequels, I'm not denying anything anybody says. Anyway, I was saying about George Lucas and Rian Johnson. The sort of hatred toward the directors of the movie, they made something they wanted to make with creative control, and people saying, oh, I don't like that movie. That's totally fine. You're allowed to say, I don't like the movie. You're not allowed to say, Rian Johnson is an awful person, he should just die. And again, this is a very small vocal minority of people, but there are comments like this out there, and it's completely sick. It makes me sick, especially with Kelly Marie Tran. I heard she was bullied off of social media. That's how bad the backlash was. And again, from everything I hear, she's a really nice person, and, you don't have to like the character of Rose Tico. That's not a reason. Like, I don't like the character of Wanda Maximoff in the Avengers, but I'm not gonna go to Elizabeth Olsen's page and be like, I hate you, Elizabeth Olsen, you're so ugly. Like, why would I do that? Just because you don't like the character of Rose Tico doesn't mean you can bully the actress. That's just so mean. I just don't think it's fair at all. going off Rose Chico, another common complaint I see a lot is how Star Wars has an SJW or feminist or leftist agenda, which I'm just gonna go off this and say Star Wars has always had a leftist agenda. You know what? You know what the Imperial people look like in the original trilogy? They look like Nazis, okay? The movie is saying Nazis are bad. Also, Leia has always been a badass, independent, tomboyish female. So, what's your problem, people? Star Wars has always had a feminist and leftist agenda. If that's a problem, don't watch the movies or don't complain about it. The other thing I'm going to say is that, the new movies, it's like people are so mad about, like, Rose. I can understand why people are mad about them adding Rose because she's an Asian character or whatever, just because we needed an Asian character, and I understand that. And I understand why they'd be angry about that, and think that's an agenda. I can sort of see where that's coming from. But they already had added an Asian character in Star Wars. You had, the blind guy in Rogue One. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. That guy. Who, like, I am one of the Force and the Force is with me, that guy. And that worked perfectly fine. Everybody seemed to love that character. So it's not a matter of race. People aren't hating her because she's Asian. People are hating her because they don't think she's a good character. I don't think she's a great character. I just don't hate her, but what I'm saying about Rose is that, it's another example of there's an agenda here. Just because there's a black guy kissing an Asian woman, a Vietnamese woman, does not mean it's an agenda, for God's sake. And even if it is, that scene was garbage anyway. But let me just let me just say here, the most feminist thing about the movie is that Leia and Holdo are in positions of command. And let me just say that, say what you will about Holdo's character, but Leia that's a perfectly logical progression. You people who claim to love the original and prequel trilogy so much and everything that George Lucas ever touched turned to gold, you people who claim to say that and love that, also, I totally would have hung out with a young George Lucas based on that Ready Player One theory, because there's a Ready Player One theory that Halliday is Lucas, because Spielberg, it's a long story. So, like, based on that, just making me like him a lot more if he's actually, like, James Halliday, because, yes! But, anyway, I'm completely off topic right now, and yes, that was kind of a joke. But going back into how to phrase this, like, it's not really I'm talking about Star Wars here, but I was talking about, the Backlash. Leia, it's a perfectly logical character progression for her to become the head of the Resistance. That makes sense for her character. So, a female being in charge, and the whole Mary Sue Rey argument. Yes, Rey's a Mary Sue. How was Luke not a Gary Stu? How was Obi-Wan not a Gary Stu? There are plenty of perfect Jedi characters in Star Wars, the only exception really being Anakin. I honestly think that they're picking on it more because she's a woman. They're making a big deal out of, oh, Rey's a Mary Sue because she's a woman. She's just another perfect Star Wars character, which is really boring. I know I really like her dynamic with Kylo. I really like Kylo Ren as a character. Completely off topic. This has nothing to do with Kylo Ren. Although I really do like Kylo Ren. But, anyway, and my last thing is, like, the overblown people making a big deal out of not stupid stuff. Like, I'm gonna boycott Solo. Like, just don't see the movie. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. And, like, let's make a campaign to remove it from the canon. Like, why do you care? It's a movie. And this is my borderline problem. If a person is being racist or homophobic or something on the internet, I'm gonna go on there and tell them, yo, that's wrong. That's really messed up. Don't say that or whatever. But guess what? If a person says The Last Jedi was trash, why am I supposed to... It's a movie! I may not like your opinion, but there is no reason to say you're a bad or mean person, or you're saying the wrong thing. And it goes the other way too. If somebody sees my comment, like, I like The Last Jedi, if somebody sees my comment and they're like, oh, you're such an awful person, that's just mean. You should reserve those types of things for, like, really bad things, like racism and stuff. And I'm just gonna end this on this note. It's a movie. don't sweat it. Please don't sweat it. Bye.